Thank you for joining me on the Darren Chatter podcast. I'm going to be reading some of my blog posts that I have written so that you can consume this information in an audio format versus reading the blogs if this is more to your liking. I'm going to share with you stories from my past as an athlete, as a coach, as a salesperson, as a business professional, as a VP of sales. Everything that I have learned and amassed along the way in my 50 years here on planet Earth, I'm going to hope to share with you in order to help you shorten your learning curve, understand maybe a little different way to look at things, and hopefully learn a few things along the way. So here was the podcast you tuned in for. I hope you enjoy it. Please reach out to me when you can and let me know your thoughts. Thank you. Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining me for the podcast that accompanies blog number 85, entitled Negative Visualization. Here is a little secret that I think not nearly enough people employ in their daily lives. Negative visualization. I'm not talking about dwelling on all the bad things in the world or how things are not going well for you right now. I am offering you a way of inoculating yourself against the common themes and fears that you have in your life. The best way for you to reduce the power of your fears is to face them head on. I can share with you a personal example in my life and how I dealt with it. For most of my life, I can remember how I was really afraid of the idea of my dad no longer being around. I know logically that this is how life works, that if things go according to the natural order, he will go before I do. That is not tragic. A real tragedy that he would have to bury his son, not the son bury his father. But even so, I was always really worried about not having him around. He has been like a guiding light in my life, and I feel like I would be lost wandering in the dark once he was gone. It wasn't until I started using negative visualization that I learned to deal with this fear more effectively. I don't want to approach anything from a point of fear per se, but I want to find a way to use that to my advantage as best as I can. So by using negative visualization, I confronted that fear of mine head on. As I played out scenarios in my mind, I came to realize that as a man myself, I need to stand on my own 2 feet and not rely on the security blanket that my father has always provided for me in my life. By that, I don't mean that he's always financially bailed me out of trouble or things like that. I just mean having him around as a resource, as a man of knowledge, as a friend as well, has always been a huge part of my life. And having that removed is a very scary proposition for sure. But at some point, we all need to come to that realization. I'm not sure when it happens for others, maybe far sooner in their life than it did for me. I know around age 40 is when I really started to look at that and think about what would happen when he's no longer around. Because of that, because of the amount of time I have spent visualizing that unfortunate and negative scenario, I have learned to temper the fears that I have when that day eventually comes. At this point, I know that I will miss him terribly, but I don't believe that I will feel that same sense of loss and truly, being just twisting in the wind without direction like I was so concerned about before. Here's another takeaway from that thought that I want to make sure that you're aware of. I know that the end is coming. And because of that, I act accordingly. I don't gloss over that fact. I don't pretend it's not hanging out there. I know at some point he's not going to be around anymore. And as I wrote in a previous blog post, there is only so much quality time left that he and I can take advantage of. So every fishing trip that we take together, I treat it like it might be our last. The fact that I have faced this fear and that I am cognizant of it allows me to use that as a positive. The negative visualization of the day when he's no longer around has empowered me to not be lazy about keeping plans with him or making sure that he and I do make plans in the near future to do stuff together. Or even just simple things like going to his house on a Sunday to watch football and hang out. It's easy to get lazy and break plans like that. But by having this be front of mind, I'm able to make sure that I don't get lazy and I live differently because of it. This is not my idea or concept. This is a basic Stoic philosophy principle that has been around for a long, long time. In ancient Greece, this was common practice. The Stoics did things that were helping them face their fears. One example is if you were afraid of poverty as a Stoic, you would spend one night or one weekend a month living in squalor on the streets, begging for food, things like that. It allowed you to face that fear and experience what that was going to be like and realize that it probably was not as bad as you had imagined it in your head. Most things are much worse in your head than they are in reality. So if your biggest concern is being self-conscious of what other people think, for example, maybe you should do exercises like wear something out that would invite ridicule and just ignore the comments that people make, or go to a party and purposely do something stupid that makes everybody laugh and realize that it's not the end of the world, that it was a temporary situation, that those people are not going to cut you out of their lives or no longer consider you a friend just because you did something that was mildly off track. As an athlete or a business professional, I think the right direction to go with this is to not imagine the failure scenes in your head. Don't visualize the negative of not reaching your goal, but instead visualize the negative side of being out of the game altogether. When you look at what life would be when you no longer are able to compete for one reason or another, you will have a much greater appreciation for what you are fortunate enough to be doing right here, right now. I know as a competitive racquetball player, I did not see an end in sight until I was burnt to a crisp and just wanted to quit. When I did that, it took me a good couple of years before I really could look back on my career, appreciate what I did, and then finally start to realize, gosh, I was so lucky while I was doing that. I wish I could still be doing that. But it was too late at that point. Another good example that I want to share is the next time your spouse irritates you, don't think how wonderful it would be if they never did that same thing again, but instead visualize the fact that what if they were no longer around? What if that person that you take for granted in your daily life suddenly fell ill or ran off with somebody else or whatever it may be? Again, that is a negative look at things, but I want you to take the positive spin out of that as an appreciation for what you have and make sure that you don't take it for granted. Imagine the impact that that would have on you if the person that you love is suddenly gone. It's painful to visualize that, to imagine what that would be like, but that's the point of the exercise. Keep that thought process front and center in your head so that you don't take that person for granted, that you don't gloss over the little things that you appreciate about them like you did in the beginning of the relationship. So, as a reminder, this tactic is meant to inoculate yourself against the fear of the things that bother you the most. Don't wait until you're looking back at something to no longer appreciate it. Sorry, try that again. Don't wait until you are looking back at something that you no longer have to appreciate it. Employ some negative visualization from time to time and understand that by doing this, you will reduce the fears and your underlying anxieties and gain a new perspective for something that you are currently so close to, it's hard to have a third-person perspective of. The clock is always ticking, and in some cases, you will never get another chance to change your perspective and take a more useful action and approach to your life. So some additional thoughts on that. As I mentioned in my racquetball career, I was, let's say, too close to the forest to see the trees. That cliche old saying has a bunch of layers of meaning to it, but basically the process is this. For me anyway, I was hell-bent on becoming a professional racquetball player when I was in my mid and then late teens. It's everything that I work towards. I put far less effort into school than I should have. I didn't worry about relationships and things like that. I wanted to be a professional racquetball player. Everything I did was geared towards that end goal. The problem was, once I got to that level, I made myself miserable with the fact that I had not made it to number one, had not made it into the top 10, had topped out at number 18 in the world, not making any money at the sport, traveling all the time, sharing a hotel room with a bunch of other guys to be able to afford to do this, because I didn't have the money, didn't win enough prize money to support that lifestyle in any reasonable fashion, beyond, truly struggling to do it. One of the guys that I roomed with all the time was forced to quit playing because of an injury. He had a really bad knee injury and has never been the same since. For me, I did it till I burned out. So those are two completely different endings to our careers. He had his taken away from him, and he would have given anything to continue doing what we were doing because he loved it. Sure, he got frustrated about things, had some bad losses that he stewed on for quite a while, things like that. It's part of the process. But he truly loved what he was doing at that time. For some reason, I could never get into my head the level of appreciation I should have for the luxury of traveling around the country playing racquetball for a living. Looking back on it, it's blatantly obvious to me that I was extremely fortunate to have that opportunity, and very thankful for the people who helped me be able to do that for the time that I did. But while I was in it, I focused on all the wrong things. I focused on the lack of results. I focused on getting to a plateau that I could never break through. I focused on not having money to be able to have my own hotel room and to rent a car everywhere we go and to fly in a day early or stay a day late and see the city that we were in, things like that. I did it the hard way. And that, again, I had a tremendous opportunity and luxury to live that lifestyle. While I was doing it, I was complaining about it. So once I learned, which clearly was after my racquetball career, to look at things through a stoic philosophy and a negative visualization of what if I never was able to do that again, now I gained some appreciation for other things in my life, such as spending time with my dad, going on fishing trips, things like that. The things that I love to do, I make sure that I prioritize them, and I picture what my life would be like if I was not able to do those things. On one of my fishing trips, I got into a very bad car accident. I got hit head on by a drunk driver at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I walked away from that accident literally with a scratch on the back of my left hand. That was it. It could have easily ended my life. It could have put me in a wheelchair or some kind of disabling injury like that. I could be laying in a hospital bed with an intubated and having machines take the place of what my automatic body functions used to be, like breathing for me, things like that. All of that could have changed in an instant. And that's one of those things that I try to use as a negative visualization to remind myself, oh yeah, I don't have any real problems in my life right now. I have irritations, I have inconveniences, but things could be far different, and I should appreciate what I have. That is the underlying theme of those Stoic philosophies. Be thankful for what you have, experience things in a different direction to help develop the appreciation that you have for your everyday life. So hopefully some of those thoughts were helpful. As always, if you would like to bounce a question off of me or whatever, if there's something I can help with, please reach out to me through my website at darrenchatter.com or any of my social media platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, at darrenchatter.com. Darren Chatter. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts or anything else you want to share, please feel free. Certainly welcome the feedback. And as always, I wish you luck with your endeavors.